Lord. Praise with my mouth, praise with my life. Everything I do, I'll praise you, Lord. Oh, Seigneur,
great to be in the house of the Lord? Amen. It is amazing to be in the house of the Lord. Amen. But that's what a lot of us believe in, but that's not true. I'm happy and thrilled to be here today. So bear with us today because we have to do what we have to do today, right? So first I want to thank you all for being here. I also want to thank the musicians. You guys did good. I think that's one of the best performances I've ever seen y'all do, so thank y'all. I also want to thank the singers. Y'all did y'all thing, so thank you guys very much. So before we start, we're about to get started. One of the first things I want to do, we need to start with a word of prayer. We already have our praises, so we need to start with a word of prayer. And since my lady here is standing here, we're going to have her bless these proceedings for us today.
Mettez-nous debout pour la prière. Adorable Père des cieux, au nom de Jésus, nous nous approchons tout près du trône de la grâce. Nous voici devant toi prosternés, bon et tendre Père des cieux, pour te demander premièrement le pardon de nos péchés. La protection, Seigneur, pour que nous puissions continuer avec cette table ronde. Veux bénir tout un chacun, et spécialement ceux qui vont nous enseigner, ceux qui vont parler et nous éduquer. Bénis chacun de nous, encore une fois, pardonne nos péchés, nos fautes et nos transgressions, au nom du Père, du Fils et du Saint-Esprit. Amen.
Thank you. The idea is to maintain the same education theme that we're having today. So the intention was to have a lot of people here today, but you guys already know what happened. The people that were supposed to have, some of them couldn't stay. But we are going to make do what we have, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and have the panelists join me so we can engage in those conversations. Now, we have a PowerPoint that was ready for you guys, so we're going to go through the first portion of it. But at this time, I would like the panelists to join up here. Come on. Come on, Brandon. I need you up here too. So one of the things that I wanted to do, I know we speak about education all the time, and I know our youth have a lot of question about education. And too many times, some accents that need to be put on certain things are not being done properly. So we wanted to have an eclectic group of people that represent different things, different walk of life, to actually demonstrate and show what it is that we do in our community. Before I get into having the panelists introducing themselves, there's a video that we would like to play.
Hi, this is Dr. Luke James Massis with Level X. I am so thrilled to share with you this great news. Listen, live events change life. I remember it was just like yesterday when I actually attended this event live that actually changed my life. At that time, I thought that everything was okay. I was a business owner, I was thriving, family was doing great, and I thought that I was serving my community. I truly thought I knew what my purpose was. But at that event, that's when I find out that God wanted more from me. He wanted me to give more. He wanted me to step to another higher level. And since then, I've been working on this entire new brand called Level X, where I work with people every day to ensure that they themselves reach a higher level in their lives and reach their full potential. Guess what? Great news. If it was good for me, it will be great for you too. That's why I'm dedicated this brand new event we're having on June 23rd and 24th. It's called Stepping Higher, the Level X Summit. You hear it. It is meant to help you to step higher in all areas of your life. Your money, your relationships, your joy, your happiness, your health, your potential. It is meant to stretch you, to bring you to a whole new level of joy and happiness and success in your life. Listen, with AI taking over, with inflation going up, with people struggling with money and all these things that are happening, if you stay in the same place, you are in trouble. But guess what? This event is here to give you the boost you need, the skills that you're going to need, the tools and the strategies, so that when you leave the place, you'll have a map in your hand and what your successful life is going to look like in the next 5-7 years. It's about time for you to step higher into your real life, your successful life, your happy life, your healthy life, and your amazing relationship life. Join us at the Marriott Center in the perimeter area, where we'll spend 2 days with you, June 23rd, June 24th, with 7 speakers with amazing stories who's going to bring you to a place you've never been before and show you how to stay there forever. I can't wait to see you. Please go to www.levelxsummit.com, reserve your seat, buy your ticket before the seats are all gone, because transformation is in order and you are born to step higher. I'll see you then.
Amen. A lot of time we trivialize those things and we feel like we don't need to be part of those things, but I think that's one of the things that are crippling our communities. It is very important that we engage into those things so we know exactly that not only that we become proficient in our spiritual life, but also so we can better in all aspect of our lives. At this point, I would like to go ahead and have the panelists introduce themselves. So I'm going to start on my left. And
hi, everyone. My name is Emmanuel Sheristal. I am a pharmacist by training, and I work as a field medical director for a pharmaceutical company.
let's have a round of applause for Emmanuel.
For those of you that already know me, my name is Jeffrey Jean-Francois. I work as a technician, as a mechanic. I'm still making so I can make it to become a master mechanic. But overall, I just want to say thank you and I'm glad to be here.
Let's have a round of applause for Jeffrey. See, again, guys, this is why we need to have communication, because up until the other day, I didn't even know he was a mechanic. You know, and I'm sure a lot of you guys, I don't know how many of you guys know, but I didn't know. So let's have a round of applause for Jeffrey, one of our own.
My name is Brandon Jomas. I am a rising MD3 or third-year medical student. Once I pass my STEP exam coming up in the next month. Yeah, I've done training. I was a scribe in the emergency room for over a year or two, so I have some experience in that, and I've also done clinicals in the nursing home, so I also have some experience in that as well.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ray Danger. I am emergency department resident doctor.
Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie Romulus, and I am a software developer.
So the idea behind this panel was to make sure that we have a well-rounded. You say who? Oh, I'm a nobody. I'm just a servant. My name is Leslie. I'm a nobody. But I wanted to make sure we have different aspects and different people who have different walk of life. I wanted to make sure that at least we have someone that's on the way to becoming a doctor. So we're very proud of you, Brendan. I wanted to make sure we have someone that represents IT. I also wanted to make sure we have someone that is a mechanic. I'm happy to know that you're a mechanic. and also as a good friend of mine, Emmanuel. I mean, me and you will go back years, man. We've been years. Funny thing about this guy, man, I got to brag on him. We used to pick up trash together in the back of the trash, right? Back in Smyrna. I mean, to see this man and all the things he accomplishes now, he travels for a living. Have you ever seen Anthony Bourdain? He had a show on CNN. That's what this guy does. He travels and have interesting conversations for a living. One can only aspire to have that in their lives. But we have those resources in our communities. However, we never fully take advantage of those conversations. We have a lot of people that are very well grounded professionally, but we never have those conversations. As a result, we don't even know some of those things. And I think that's one of the things that our communities lack, because we don't have those conversations. I mean, we pray all the time, and that's a very important aspect of what we do. Prayer is a central part of what we do as Christians. However, we still have to relate to the outside world. We still need to be out there and provide for our families. And the only way we know how these things goes is by having those serious conversations, right? So I wanted to make sure that the panel represents the people that are doing really good in our communities. There's some that I wanted to read in regards to education and what the focal point of it should be. Every person must face the practical realities of life, its opportunities, its responsibilities, its defeats, its successes. How he is to meet these experiences, whether he is to become master or victim of circumstances, depend largely upon the preparation to cope with his education. So the education that you have in life will pretty much be a determining factor in how you're gonna deal with certain things in your life, okay? So before we go into asking the panelists some questions, I wanted to put a few things in perspective for everybody. Some numbers. So can they go to the next slide for me? So we couldn't not start without a word from the Bible. Proverbs 27, verse 17. Iron sharpen iron, so men sharpen the countenance of his friends. The people you choose to surround yourself with will pretty much determine your trajectory in life. I think that's very fitting, considering that we're having those conversations. So let's go to the next slide. So I know one of the main topics that everybody talks about, especially in the Haitian community, is l'église, l'école, la caille. That's all we know by those 3 L's, l'église, l'école, la caille. So I wanted to talk about the Haitian parents versus higher education. Next slide. Okay, so one of the conversations I always hear the youth usually say about their parents is the fact that their parents don't really understand exactly the things that are happening right now in the outside world. You know, so, but when you try to understand where your Haitian parent is coming from, you have to understand that Haitian parents often place a strong emphasis on education. Now, I know it is just being a doctor, being a lawyer, being an engineer. Those are the typical things that your Haitian parents usually push you for. But in their mind, they only try to relate to what they've seen that worked, okay? So they still believe that it can be a pathway out of poverty. They also believe that education is a way to break the cycle of limited opportunities. Overall, Haitian parents encourage their children to pursue higher education because they believe it offers them a pathway to success, personal growth, and opportunity to make a positive impact in their own lives and society as a whole. So even though we may feel like our Haitian parents don't really understand what's going on in the current world, however, they do understand that education is the path forward. Next slide. Now, let's talk about how beneficial is higher education, okay? So we have some numbers we put in there. So back in the 1980s, on average, a house used to cost about $64,000. In 2022, that was last year, it's about $336,000 on average. That's a 425% increase. In 1980s, a car used to cost around $7,000. In 2022, it costs about $47,000. That's a 571% increase. Next slide. If you look at the overall increase, the colleges have been getting more and more expensive, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure you guys can testify to this and how much money you guys have to pay for college, right? It's a pretty penny that you have to come up with. Now, the cost of tuition actually rose from the 1980s to now to about 1,200%. So if you were to juxtapose the cost of colleges, how much it costs, versus houses and cars, which is about 400% and 500%, the tuition have doubled that amount, right? Next slide. So since the 1980s, the colleges have increased of 1,200%, and the income that we made based on those diplomas that we've earned, about 217, 220%, right? So the money that we get, we're supposed to be earning with those diplomas, sometimes they don't really match, right? Next slide. Now, at some point, colleges and government, they start working together, you know? Right now, you guys can, if you want to buy a house, you can go to Chase Bank, and they will loan you the money to actually go ahead and do that. You can't really do that for your school. It is a subsidy by the government, and this is the only debt that you can't get rid of. Once you get that school debt, you're gonna have to pay it. All right? So if you look at the inflation, everything went up, the tuition went up. Now, the government guaranteed that no matter what happened, you're gonna have to repay that money. All right? So the colleges loans, they were backed by the government. For every dollar the government loaned, the tuition goes up by 60 cents. Well, here's another thing. I don't know if you guys know this. Colleges don't pay zero taxes. Zero. They don't have to pay any tax. So colleges are just like 501c3 and churches. They don't pay any taxes. And colleges have zero regulation on how much they can increase their prices. They can increase them however they feel like. Next slide. Now, these are how much money, like those are the endowments that these colleges have, meaning this is how much money they have in reserve. Harvard University have $53 billion in their reserves. My bad. Harvard University have $53 billion, Yale University have $42 billion, Stanford University have $37 billion, Princeton have $37 billion, Massachusetts Institute of Technology have $27 billion, the University of Pennsylvania have $20 billion, University of Notre Dame, $18 billion, Texas A&M, $16 billion, University of Michigan, $16 billion, Washington University in St. Louis has $13 billion. This is how much money these guys have in their reserve, their endowments, billions of dollars, okay? Now, you guys know one of the biggest, most well-recognized name, McDonald's. Guess how much money McDonald's have in their reserves? About 100 billion? Any other guess? How much money McDonald's have in their reserves? Well, no, McDonald's only have 2.3 billion in their reserve endowment. So these colleges are way more profitable as a business model than McDonald's. Only have 2.3 billion in their endowment reserve. Exactly. So colleges rake in way more money than one of the top Fortune 500 companies? Right? Let's go to the next slide. So there's a salary expectation versus reality. The average graduate is expected to make 104. But that's what we think we're gonna make. But in reality, we only. And on average, a computer science grad is expected to make 95,000, but in reality, they only make about 75,000. A journalist is expected to make 107,000, but in reality, they only make about 45,000. Next slide. There should be one more. Well, no worries, that's fine. But I just wanted to put these things in perspective to show you guys some of the things that's going on in the market. Meaning, whenever you guys are engaging into trying to learn a profession, you guys need to know exactly what you're getting yourself into. You guys need to do the research into knowing exactly what to expect. Because we can't just walk in blindly into things. We're gonna have to pay back for whatever we're gonna have to pay for. Okay, so having said all of that, education is very important. It always still gives you a leg up in understanding the way the world works and actually being able to provide for your family and also pursuing your own passion. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and start with you. Okay. And again, we're just gonna go ahead and ask a few questions. I'm pretty sure some of you guys are gonna have your question your own, so we're gonna take those questions as well. Emmanuel, let me start with you. What is your educational background and training as a pharmacist? Let's just start there.
So my background as a pharmacist is I started in community college. At the time when I started, a bachelor's degree wasn't necessarily needed to get into pharmacy school. So my plan was to complete a biochemistry degree. You remember those days in Smyrna, to get my bachelor's in biochem so I could transfer into pharmacy school. But once I had enough credits to apply for pharmacy school, which I did because I had the grades to do so, and I think I completed 3 years, and then I was able to get accepted into pharmacy school with because my grades were enough and I had enough credit hours to be able to do that. But had I not gotten accepted, I would have gotten my biochemistry degree and then going into a college for pharmacy to obtain my doctor of pharmacy degree.
The same question goes to Jeffrey.
Repeat the question one more time.
What is your educational background? Pretty much what did it require for you to actually jump into the mechanical world?
For the mechanical, just like his, actually you don't need like an extra degree. As long as you have like a high school diploma, you could start a career as like a lube tech or for any business or any other things. But when you have your certifications, they'll employ you to give you heavier stuff and like be like, oh, they have different forms of, mechanics will be like, hey, this is a lube tech, you got a heavy technician, and then, you got the all-around tech and all the other stuff. But yeah, overall, I recommend everybody to go to school so, you can get a better position wherever you start.
Okay, so to get into med school, you need to have your prerequisite classes. The easiest way to do that for me, I found was to do what's it called? I was a bio major. I was a biology major, and so like basically you get all my prerequisite classes because you need your like basic biology, chemistry. It's been a long time, but English, math, it's sciences. Because like when you apply, they actually look at your GPA, your overall GPA, and then they look at your science GPA. That's a whole separate thing. So they literally just look at all your science classes, and then they calculate your GPA based off of that. And yeah, so I mean, really, you just gotta get your prerequisite classes. So you could be like an English major and like still get, as long as you take those basic classes, because some schools require different maths. Like I took biocalculus, but some schools only require statistics. But I didn't take statistics myself. So it really depends on where you want to go and what their requirements are.
All right, to piggyback off of Brandon, definitely agree with just what you're interested in and where you're trying to go. For me, I didn't want to be a biology major. I was more interested in math, but I still love science, so I was a math pre-med major where I just did my prerequisites, as he was mentioning, and then my major, though, was math. And then after that is 4 years of medical school. You can decide to take a gap year or some time off. I did, and when I tell you, it was probably one of the best decisions that I could have made, because then you have time to really think and reflect on if this is the career option you want to go, especially thinking about the cost, as you were mentioning before, of schooling moving forward. And so, during that time, I had a chance to get more exposure in work. And then after medical school, you start residency. And depending on what you want to do, if it's emergency medicine, surgery, family medicine, the number of years vary. For me, residency is 3 years, so I'm going on I'm finishing my first year right now.
My educational background for IT was I did a coding boot camp. So there are a couple of options that you have when you're trying to transition to IT. You could do a coding boot camp like I did, or if you want to go being self-taught, there are people in the field that are actually self-taught. And you also have the traditional way, which is going to college and earning a 4-year degree. But by then, I was like already married, and I have a son. So, 4-year degree at that time for me was not something that I saw myself doing. It would have taken so much time. So what I did was I started off working in help desk for a while, just kind of getting basic knowledge on IT. And then from there, I started doing my coding boot camp, and I completed it in like 3 months. And then from there, I was able to find work.
So I kind of want to piggyback on what you just talked about, the coding boot camp, which is one of the ways that you can actually go ahead and get into this field and propel yourself into having a career. So what are some of the components that would be the most trying things in terms of the coding boot camp that you encountered when you were going through that process?
I would say is if you've never programmed before, the biggest thing is actually coding. Like, being able to understand this is, when people say computer language, what they're referring to is basically instructions that you're telling a computer to do a task. Because computers, they don't really know anything. Someone has to program them in order for them to know what they're doing. So every application that you see that's built, whether it's a website or a mobile application, it was built using a computer language. And there's so many different languages out there and so many different technology stacks. So the hardest part is actually coding, but you got to be wise in which language that you want to choose. One of the quickest languages to learn is like JavaScript. That's because it's used in web development, and it's the quickest way to get a job. And it also is the quickest, it's actually the best way language to choose if you do not have a traditional background. If you have a traditional background, they're expecting you to know all kinds of different like crazy algorithms and all that kind of stuff. And the average person might not really know what to do with that. So the hardest component is coding, but if you are gonna, you decide to code, you have to dedicate at least a few hours every day, at least 2 to 3 hours, like outside of your studies, just to learn it. As soon as you learn it, you can pick up any other language quickly.
Going back to Emmanuel, I already know you kind of touched on the processes that you had to go through when you were getting ready for your education and subsequently getting accepted to school. What were some of the main components of some of the things that you had to learn in terms of the curriculum? And also, which one was the hardest part of it? Meaning, was it the scheduling aspect of it? Was it the retention of the materials that was, which part were the toughest component to getting to that?
Are you referring to the undergrad part or the actual pharmacy program?
Well, let's just say the undergrad, because that's what propelled you into.
Okay, good question. So I'd say the hardest thing, as some of the pre-med majors mentioned, was the science courses and the math background that you got to have, because I think once you start your undergrad studies, regardless if you're doing pharmacy, pre-med, pre-dentistry, we all start pretty much at the same level. And then that's when you branch out depending on which program you plan on going. So that journey is pretty similar, and but you don't necessarily have to focus on like an actual science degree for undergrad. You could do any other types of degrees like arts or humanities, whatever, psychology, social sciences, but however, you still need to make sure you have those science prerequisites, math prerequisites that you need to be able to get into the pharmacy program. So for me, the hardest part was going through that journey. And honestly, my first chemistry class I recall in undergrad, so going back to high school, I used to be a pretty studious, student, and things came pretty easy for me. But when I hit college and I was taking my first chemistry course, it beat my butt, to be respectful. So that was a wake-up call. And I realized very quickly this is a different level of science, which was going to require a lot more studying, a lot more focus. And I honestly failed my first two exams in my first chemistry class. But I told myself, I can't get into pharmacy school without getting through chemistry, so I have to do this. So I ended up dropping the class before midterms because I didn't want it to mess up my GPA. And then I was able to go back the next, so actually I spoke with my teacher, I remember, and then she said, all right, if you want, go ahead and drop the class, but if you want to, keep coming to class to take notes, so hopefully things will make sense better for you. And I don't know if you remember that when we used to work at the city. So even though I had already dropped the class and I wasn't getting any credit for it, I would finish working and still go to school because I took on that suggestion that she gave me. And then the following semester, I retook the class, same teacher, because she was actually one of the toughest chemistry teachers on campus. So I figured if I could get through to her with my class, then the rest of it would be easy, and which is exactly what happened. So the next semester I went back, took the class, and I got an A. And then from then on, that kind of built my background for being able to understand the sciences and took it from there. So that, I would say that was the toughest part, is getting acclimated with the sciences, with the math, because you have to get to different levels of sciences to get into those degrees.
As I can imagine, man, going to work and school don't mix. I'm pretty sure a lot of people already know that. But having to do a back-breaking job and clocking out and then going to school and trying to retain information of new concepts that you have not been exposed to quite yet, it's not easy. I know it's a very, very hard task. And then especially if you have a family component in that as well, it's gonna make it even more harder. So Jeffrey, the same question goes to you, man. Like, what are some of the components that were challenging going into this field that you had to figure out a way to work around it in order for you to earn your place in that position?
Okay. At first, it's like, for like growing up as a Haitian kid, most of the parents will be like, hey, become a doctor, become a lawyer, But overall, I like cars. It's like, I encourage everybody, if you find something that you like, that you're into, go for it, because it make you happy, and then you'll do a good job at what you decide to go into. What I found challenging is like, I also went to a trade school, a 2-year school. is mostly with electricity, because most of the time people can't see electricity and they don't really understand it. So mostly people are scared of it. Because, like, for example, your battery dies and you're trying to charge it, and then people are like, they're scared to touch the connectors, but you can touch it and nothing will happen to you. It's just something to throw out there. But overall, like, my point is just like continue to strive for your goals, strive for what you like, and I'm also, since I'm not also I'm taking a short break because I'm trying to do diesel too, because diesel it's much more, you get paid more, and like it's a real eye opener because this is a big field. I don't want to keep rambling, but yeah.
What's funny is all of us that are here today, I'm pretty sure we had to jump in the car and drive it to get here. And I'm pretty sure at some point one of us, we jumped into our car when we tried to start it, it didn't work. And I'm pretty sure we didn't have a good day trying to figure this thing out. So it's very much important what you do. And that's the thing that I'm trying to make sure that we all understand. Those trade jobs are very important. Just because we stigmatize the idea behind what these things represent, that's on us, because I can tell you, even a plumber and electricians, I hope I have one of these guys present. I got something that I'm working on right now, and I have an electrician doing some work for me, right? He's charging me, get this, well, I had to bring it down. He was trying to charge me $250 an hour to get the job done for me. I brought it all the way down, so thank God for my negotiation skills. I brought it down to $130 an hour. So imagine someone like that working 40 hours a week, and every week I got to pay him. Y'all do the math. So all these trade skills that we stigmatize because of our own ideologies, those things are very important, because I can tell you right now, if there's no electricity, nobody can do anything. If he decides today he's gonna go mess with our computers back there and change some coding, we're not gonna be able to transfer any of that stuff out there on YouTube, so we can forget about all of that. So those things that we don't understand, just because we don't understand it doesn't mean there's no value behind it. So it's very much valuable. And again, finding something that you actually enjoy doing too is also very important. So Brendan, you are a student, and I'm pretty sure you guys, well, she just got out of this field, so you are still going through this right now. What are some of the most challenging things that you had to face getting ready, not only during the process of you trying to stabilize yourself as a med student, but also knowing exactly which component to study and things like that? So what are some of the most challenging things for you?
Okay. Well, I would say I'm still looking for the balance right now. I feel like I've never found it. I think a lot of people feel like that though. You know, it's like you're always trying to find how to balance it. Like literally right now, because of my step exam on June 28th, I'm supposed to be studying 10 hours a day. So like, I mean, I saw a sample schedule that starts at 7 a.m. and then goes all the way till about 10 p.m. Is that 10 hours? Yeah, it's about 10 hours a day. And I'm like, that by itself, just looking at it, it's more than a full-time job. You're already working more hours than, like a full-time job. Granted, it includes lunches and stuff, but it's trying to just there's no life outside of studying at this point right now. I've been telling a lot of people, it's like, you're not gonna hear from me for a while, because I gotta sit down and try to get this stuff done. Because I mean, obviously, I gotta pass so I can carry on. So like that I guess the work-life balance is definitely been very difficult. But I mean, you definitely do gotta make sure you take time for yourself as well. I mean, at the end of the day, because if you're trying to pour from an empty cup, you're not gonna be able to do it. Like I can tell you right now, after my finals a couple weeks ago, I took a week off. I couldn't. I literally could not sit down and start studying for the step exam. I was like, I just went through 2 weeks of exams. How am I supposed to start studying again for this? Because if I try to, I'm gonna be sitting there staring at the books. You're reading the same line over and over and over again. It's like nothing's like sticking to sticking with you. So like that work-life balance is definitely something is like been trying to figure out, and like even just because such a workload. There's so much coming at you at one time. you know, and like sometimes you gotta admit, it's very humbling. It's very humbling, because like, I mean, you know, I don't want to brag, but it's like going through undergrad, it wasn't too difficult, thankfully, you know, and I thank God for that. But going into med school, I was like, what was I doing all 4 years of my undergrad? You know, I was like, I wasn't studying, like I must not have been studying for real, because like, what was going on, you know? And I would say that like my second year, I had to extend it because of so much stuff going on. I was failing class exams, and I'm like, there's no way, you know. But like, you know, after a lot of prayer and like talking to different like counselors and stuff, and like you know advisors, you know, thankfully I've been finding a better balance now, and now we're here now. You know, I'm definitely moving through and able to study for my stuff, but I think work-life balance has been always that's like the biggest thing. Because the studying, to me, I enjoy the work, I enjoy learning, but it's like finding the energy and the discipline to continue on with that. Because there's gonna be days where you don't want to do anything. So, you know.
So a few things. I first want to congratulate you on the fact that you still have some hair, because you should be pulling them out. That's the first thing. And second, church members, Brandon shows up and does an amazing job here in this church, even though he has so much things going on. You know, and I'm pretty sure God have a special blessing for him, especially because I've studied for 2 board exams, and they're nowhere near what you have to endure. And let me tell you, it took me completely out of circulation for me to actually place myself and trying to figure out a way to learn the materials and apply them the way they need to be applied and go take that board exam. So, man, thank you for your service. So the same question applies to you, Sister Donjay. What are some of the things that were challenging for you going through your process?
A couple of things come to mind. The first one are the standardized exams. I've never been a standardized or exam taker. The MCAT was, I really think that exam is of the devil. It one of those things, maybe like a hazing thing that they do, because the studying that comes into it and the time, as Brandon was alluding to, is something else. But one thing I just had to learn was just practice questions. And because it was such a bad experience for me before I went into medical school or trying to get into medical school, I just tried to apply those things for when I went to medical school. So one of the schools that I chose, they have exams, at least 3 to 4 exams every week. So I chose that one specifically just because I didn't want exams to be something that became a fear in the future. And I think that's come in handy. I have my step 3s just because they can't give us enough step exams. But I have step 3 coming up in July, so prayers are welcome. But that was just one of the things that I had to learn, I guess kind of a hard way. The other thing is really trust, and especially with like the SDA faith. One thing that I found was in med school, a lot of my classmates were thinking, how can you take these 24 hours? You have 3 to 4 exams every week. How can you take the Sabbath and actually keep it? And it took a lot of prayer and talking to God and just being real upfront and personal to be able to go through that experience and keep my faith as I'm supposed to. So what I found, which was such a blessing, was I would still be keeping the Sabbath and coming to church and praying, all of those things, and still be able to perform in my exams just as people who were studying during that time. And so to students, I definitely encourage them, yes, it might seem like a big sacrifice and impossible, but God got your back. And so, so those 2 things were the biggest things that stood out to me.
I hope you guys pick up on some of the key components they were talking about, speaking about the way they navigate the outside world, and also juxtaposing those things they face into their Christian faith, which is very important, which actually would be the next question I wanted to ask. But I'm just going to go ahead and have you talk about what are some of the challenges that you faced, going through the system yourself.
pretty much the same question you asked everybody, right? The biggest challenge for me was, I can say it was, like I said from earlier, like the coding part, just because the language that I was working with, it's a language that you can use to build like enterprise level applications, and it's object oriented programming. It's a different way of thinking, but it's yeah, like to me that was really the hardest part, and it's really finding the time to study, because I was at the time I was working, and then plus I was doing the boot camp, and a lot of the people that were in the boot camp surprisingly were students that had CS degrees. So there was a lot of stuff they were talking about, like I didn't even know what they were talking about, and I was researching most of the time. And a good friend of mine, he kind of helped me through the process. He told me that being a developer, you're not expected to memorize anything. He was saying that he was considering at one point to become a doctor, and he was like, it did not work out for him. And he was like, because you got to memorize all these different, terms and, different things. He was like, you just got to know how to find the information. And when, I understood that, it was easier for me to figure out things that I did not know. And so, even if I'm exposed to right now language that I've never coded in before, as long as I understand, the basic syntax, I can pick it up like in mere seconds. So, once I learned how to learn, for that, it became a lot easier for me.
So, Sister Danger, Dr. Danger, talked about how her Christian faith pretty much helped her during this process. So I wanted to juxtapose that, and because for me personally, this is my foundation, and I rely on my Christian faith to go through so many different aspects of my life, even though it may be a business decision or deciding whether or not I'm gonna get into a business with someone. Relying on prayer for me is an important aspect of the way I process things. And we know that we are in this world, but we're not of this world. So I always keep that in the back of my mind as the basis of how I make a lot of decisions, and also making sure that I stay steadfast in my own faith. So again, the question that I'm gonna ask you guys, and I know you already touched on that a little bit. When you guys are faced with tough decisions, and when you guys are faced with insurmountable things that you into your field of research or your field of study, how does your Christian faith help you? And because if you look at the world right now and everything else that's going on, the world is becoming a wretched place by the minute. There's a lot of decisions that are being made that directly impact or affect the way we conduct ourselves as Christians. So the question to y'all is, how do you guys make sure that you stay centered as Christians, even though we are operating, because you guys are operating in the top of your professional fields? So how do you guys maintain your Christian faith as a basis of some of the things you guys engage with?
Personally, I will say that's quite of a loaded question, because it is challenging. 'Cause I remember being in even an undergrad, not even pharmacy school, as I was working and trying to get through the process, working for the city as a garbage man. I needed to get some type of pharmacy experience, and I could get a job at a pharmacy to get that experience, but not only they were not paying as much, believe it or not, as a technician compared to what I was making picking up trash. I opted out to not work as a tech, but I chose to volunteer instead at a hospital pharmacy. But I chose not to do it on Saturdays, but I would do it on Sundays. So, meaning I would go to work Monday through Friday, working for the city, and then in the evenings go to school, and then on Sundays go to the pharmacy. But over time, I would say that the way that I try to manage that is, to be quite honest, is I've grown with my Christian faith, more specifically, obviously, Seventh-day Adventist. But I personally have learned to understand that God is beyond just the way that I've seen him through just the Christian lens, but see him as through the sovereignty of what he is as God. And that has helped me in multiple ways, not just for me personally, for my continued growth, but also how I'm able to see other people who are not necessarily Christian, so that I don't find myself shutting other people out, so to speak. So it's kind of a fine line that I try to walk, but I say all of that to say that I try my best to lean on God, to lean on, his word as much as possible, and his true understanding. And I can say when I started pharmacy school, I started getting a totally different understanding of God is through work that I started doing in the community as a pharmacy student. I started being able to connect the things that we do in church, for example, the reaching out or preaching, whatever it may be. I started trying to connect that to how was Jesus actually doing things. He was physically in the community, touching people. So one way that helped me is through my studies, not just in school, but through the teachings I got from church. I started to try to parallel that with how would Jesus do things? How was he doing things? Because he was constantly in the community. So that led me to find myself constantly immersed till today. I do a lot of community service because of that, because I understand what God has given me, the knowledge, understanding, intelligence, all of these different things. I've learned to understand that it's not by chance. And if he can bless me with that, even beyond being a Christian, my goal is to take that to the community as much as possible. So that's what's helped me, and it's helped me to find peace, comfort, and absolutely happiness. Because outside of my day-to-day job, I know I have another calling to try to touch others through the community, and not just within the Haitian community, but everyone as much as possible worldwide, because I believe that we are all connected. Just because I'm Haitian doesn't mean a brother of mine who's Jamaican I cannot help, or a brother who's from wherever in the world that I can, because we all the same. That's kind of the way that I see it. Hopefully that helped answer the question.
It did. Jeffrey.
Okay, so from my experience, like how I allow God to be in my life while working as a technician. Also during school, like I had my friend Shumi's not here today, but he showed us this Bible app where well, it'll read to us. Basically, we have like a 365. Read the Bible, like try to read the Bible for one whole year. So sometimes if I can't physically read the Bible, I can at least listen to the Bible, where it becomes very helpful and be very knowledgeable. Always hearing God's words and it in your heart. When you feed your spirit good stuff, you produce good fruit. So that's just one of the ways for myself. Also, if you find like a prayer partner, or like me and my fiance, we're a little slacking, but we still We still do it. Like what we do is try to do devotion with our lesson, because that's good practice. And to have somebody with you, when one or two people come in Christ, Christ is there.
I would say I also do something similar to Jeff. Yeah, me and my fiance, we have a Bible. The Bible app allows you to start a plan with people. So we have an app. We'll pick plans daily. Maybe it might be like a 7-day plan, 14-day plan, and each day has like a devotional and Bible verses. And I would say yes, every Friday. When I first started med school, we started middle pandemic once the pandemic started. So it was a little hard to be like, oh yeah, tune in to church on Saturday morning, on the Zoom or whatnot. But then as things started going and going, because I definitely tried to make sure Friday night, I let all people know, that's when all my classmates want to go party and stuff, have fun. I'm like, I can't go, I got my Sabbath and everything. So I definitely try to stay every Friday night to Saturday, it's church time, But one thing I actually found that because I was working so much in the church, especially as we started getting the live stream going, is that a lot of times I'll be working so much, I'm actually not paying attention to the service. So once I kind of realized that, we try to start, delegating, trying to help let other people work so we can kind of balance it out. So now, even if I'm working, like say I work today, then the next Saturday I'm off, so I can kind of just, enjoy service. So I actually found that, yes, even though I've been at church, I'm not getting stuff from church. So I actually had to kind of, once I realized it, then, try to fix it. But yeah, try to Bible plan. And then, really just stay close to God, try to pray every day and everything. And yeah, that's pretty much what I do.
For me, it came down to just one word, which was relationship. So with that I had to learn about making the time and also listening, just as in any relationship. So no matter if, I felt like I would be losing an extra amount of time just to have my devotion, for example, trying to focus on the benefits that come from that, just starting the day off with God and letting that be what influences the rest of the course of the day, be something that I realize that is even more important than having those extra X amount of minutes to study something or to do whatever. And so, with that time starting off the day, I also just found that dedicating at least my ride back to home or to school, where I'm, praising or listening to a sermon or something like that, kind of kept me connected to a point where it wasn't just for a moment or for, in a certain setting that I was experiencing God, but and a daily basis and like multiple times throughout the day. So that really helped. And then listening too, which was, I think, probably the biggest thing for me, because it's so hard to differentiate when God is speaking to you versus it's just your own thoughts. And so for me, with our exams, for example, I kind of use that as my experience to see how, when God is speaking to me, there'll be so many cases, and I still struggle with this, but so many cases where, I'm thinking to put this answer, I don't really have my reason why, but I'm like, no, I convinced myself out of it, and then, you come out of the test, and yep, that was it. Not listening, but, just kind of differentiating between you and your own thoughts and God trying to speak to you. So those things kept me grounded, and it's still a work in progress, but it was beneficial to learn these lessons.
The way that my faith has helped me pretty much navigate through the world of IT is just spending that time being able to pray. Fasting is very important. There are times when I really felt like I was deep into the battle, I really had to fast. And I realize the importance of fasting is, when we fast and pray, we are actually starving the flesh so that we can, achieve the spirit. And, when I was a kid, I didn't really see the importance of it. I couldn't understand it. I knew it was important, but it's just I could never see myself, praying, for hours on end. Then when I started realizing when I completely need God and I can't do this through my own strength, that my prayers became longer without even me trying to make it longer. Like if I'm praying with somebody, I really have to remind myself, like, cut the prayer, cut the prayer, cut the prayer, because I can go on and on, because I realize, like, Ray said, it's a relationship, and it's building relationship with God. And another thing that kind of kept me going is I always think back in the Bible, like when Moses was leading the children of Israel out of Egypt, when they came in front of the Red Sea, they were faced with an impossible situation. There was mountains like around them, the Egyptians were behind them, and then they have this Red Sea in front of them, and they're, wondering like, how is God going to deliver me? And even Moses was wondering the same thing. And, God was angry with Moses because it's like, I'm God, like the stuff that I've done already, I can get you out of this situation. And knowing that God already knows the outcome of everything, so nothing is a surprise for him. And I always tell myself this, it might be a surprise to me, but it's not a surprise to him, because God already knows what's going to happen. So all it requires is for me to have faith. And I had to understand that the enemy will try to use whatever tactics he can for me to doubt, because once we start doubting, then we become very anxious. We don't know if God can get us out of a situation. And like I kept telling myself, like, no, I'm not going to allow that to happen. And I allow it now to be this thing where this is a test that God is putting me through, and my goal is, like, I want to pass this test. So my having faith in him that he'll get me through, particularly the coding boot camp. It was like one of the hardest things I ever done in my life. You're literally squeezing what someone would learn in 4 years in 3 months. And even then, you didn't really learn everything. So there's this imposter syndrome that you feel like, I don't belong in this field. And for a lot of times, I tell myself that I really don't belong here. One of these days you're gonna figure out, like, I don't know what I'm doing, like, But when I realized even the ones with the 4-year degree or some with master's degree or PhD, they're just as clueless as I am. And that allowed me to be really comfortable in my situation. I learned that if God can get me through this, he can get me through anything. So at this point in my life, like, my faith has grown tremendously, and I'm happy that God took me through that journey. And this is the part where Jesus talks about being baptized of the Holy Spirit and a fire. And a fire is just the trials and tribulations. So it's like, this is what's going to refine me. This is what's going to get me ready for heaven. So I look at this as my journey to heaven. And however, anyone that I meet, like, that has any questions about IT, I'm always glad to share it. I'll even go as far as to research and stuff for people, just because if God could get me through here, this is the only way that I can give back.
What I like about all of y'all responses is the fact that there's growth all throughout what you guys are saying, in both sense, in your professional career as well as your relationship with God. And I think that's one of the most important things that we can rely on. Now, I will have one more question, and of course, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if anybody has any question, we're gonna turn it over to the people, the members, to actually ask some questions. But are there any projects, and that goes for all of you guys, are there any projects that you guys worked on that you really liked the project, that you were glad to be part of this project? Are there any specific project that y'all worked on?
Yeah, there was a project that comes to mind. When I was in pharmacy school, I think second or third year, I was leading an organization on campus, and I was the president at the time. And around that time is when the Affordable Care Act was getting started, the Obamacare, basically. And the group that I was with, we decided, because the group was focused on health economics and outcomes research. So basically, the money that is spent in healthcare, how does that translate in terms of real-world evidence, real-world care? Are we saving money or are we wasting money? So that was the focus of the group at the time. So we decided to take the approach to try to address this whole Obamacare thing because it was making so much noise in the news. And we figured, since this is a real world situation, and we're about to get into the real world pretty soon, let's try to see how we can have a discussion around this. So we worked on putting a panel of participants together, similar to how we have here, but we pulled people within the medical field from different sectors. We had physicians, we had nurses, PAs, physician assistants. We had pharmaceutical industry representatives, all on one panel. And then, just as you are doing, we were asking questions about how they thought this whole program was going to either help or not help the population, the people, or what have you. And I must say, it was surreal what we found out because there was so much confusion. So once we put the panel together, to backtrack a little bit, we invited students and people from across campus, not just pharmacy students, but students from all across the campus, because everybody was gonna need to know about this. And we even went into the community and brought people in a room. And the debate got heated between all the different people sitting on the panel, because some people felt like where this thing was going to help, because they were either gonna gain more patients or more money through payments, so on and so forth, because we also had insurance representatives, health insurance representatives as well. But some people felt like they were going to lose money through this whole thing. So it was probably one of the realest things that I experienced as a student. And I think till today, this thing is still being talked about, like how it's impacted healthcare across the country. And it was very interesting to see in the real world how people really thought and felt about this. And people were yelling at each other. You know, it was fun, but it was very surprising at the same time. And I must say that experience itself served me well in my career, because I was able to use that as an example of something I did in school to help me to secure a position once I finished pharmacy school, to start a postdoctoral training program to do what I'm doing now in my field. So I thank God that we were able to do it. It helped. It helped that day, and it also helped me. It helped everybody that was in the room. But most importantly, it was an amazing experience. So thanks for asking that.
On special project that you have worked on. Yeah, any project that marked your career that you would like to talk about. If you had to souped up a car or add some extra turbo, whatever you had to do.
Well, anything. Anytime a technician, when you said project, I was like, when you tell a technician that there's a project, it's like, oh, what are we doing to the car? We're flipping it, or at least try to get it to run. It can be like a rolling shell, meaning that it's a car that has no engine.
I remember I had a project I was working on the car. Mm-hmm. I tore the car apart. I never put it back together.
Wow.
So that didn't work for me.
Okay. Well,
it's a failed project. So we're not gonna talk about that one.
Well, yeah, there's a saying. They say that if you don't break it, how could you learn? So sometimes well, it's never too late. So you gotta start from somewhere.
Nah, that car is gone.
But overall, I'm sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought. But yeah, for projects, like most of the times, like personally for me, I will try to sometimes go back out to the community where I will try to do try to help people out with their cars. If their car has some minor problems, I will go out and try to see if I can get them going. Because sometimes fixing cars is expensive. You go to a dealer, they shoot you with an arm and a leg, kidney, eyeball, whatever they can get from you. But yeah, just try to get back to the community, try to help people out. This overall.
Brandon, any project that you worked on?
So one thing I've done, my first year, there's this organization, a national organization called Black Men in White Coat, and the whole purpose is to get more black men in white coats, because there's a small percentage of black physicians, and then there's an even smaller percentage of black male physicians. So the whole purpose of it was, to literally get more black boys into med school. I was part of the founding chapter at Morehouse for it. So us and like 10 other guys, and we all started the organization. And literally it's about mentorship and how to because I wouldn't have got here without people helping me get here with mentorship. So like stuff we've done is like we work with like Emory, and like they have a program with middle schoolers, and they just about med school, like they might go over cases with them, kind of just get them interested in the science, so really mentorship has been something really big for me, trying to just get the next generation, and especially for people who are interested, because it's hard when people keep looking at you telling you you can't make it, but it's like when you have something to help guide you along the way, all of a sudden doors start opening, So outside of that, I also have a couple people I mentor, like just outside of the organization themselves too. So just try to reach out and talk to people and teach them, and like any questions they have, I tell them please, I'm free, open to any questions they got. I help them in any way that I can. So mentorship.
So for me, I had a chance during med school to go to Dominican Republic for about a week with my med school. They had the students, they had the physicians also, they had the pharmacists too, which was one of the things that actually stood out to me. Every day was a different thing with a different group of people. I remember the Wednesday of that week, it was a large Haitian population that was there living in the DR, and it was amazing how just giving them the one tablet for like if they had any worms or some kind of illness, where that one tablet made a difference, and how just grateful they were, and also too just the amount of resources that you have there versus where you have here. When I came back to the U.S., gave me a better perspective and appreciation for what we have here. And it's one of the things, I guess this is more of a project in progress, but I would like to incorporate in my residency, just because, moi travaille avec moun blanc en pile. We have a lot of, different nationalities that haven't been exposed to underserved communities. And I think getting out there and seeing what the community needs, or what resources that we have that we can provide to them would make a difference. And when somebody, like even a homeless person, comes to the emergency department, not seeing them, oh, it's just a homeless person that just wants food and just wants to sleep here for a moment, but actually seeing them more as a human, and considering their needs. So it's a work in progress, and I'm praying to God that this is something that can be successful and continue on throughout the years. But that's it for me.
Project that I was really proud of was, so in the boot camp that I was part of, we were given like a capstone project that we had to complete before we graduated from the program. And the crazy thing was there were a couple of employers that were looking into like graduates within the boot camp, and there was while we was working on a project, it's like there was a huge Fortune 500 company that was coming in, and they really wanted to see, some of the things that we were doing. And we literally had to build an application from like the ground up within a week. We had to build it within a week. And one thing is, apps take a while to build because you really have to sit down and really, plan things out. like how you're going to build it, like what it's going to include. Because you really got to think of like when the end user is using it, like, you know, some of the typical problems that maybe they might run into. So it's a lot of, you know, brainstorming before you actually can build it. And, you know, some of us was pulling all-nighters. But the part that I was really proud of was when it came to like the business logic and even like building the database, like that was a part that I really excelled in. And so we kind of broke up into groups. It was like maybe 4 of us, and I took care of, you know, the database with the business logic and, you know, building the API, and someone else did the front end, somebody did like wireframing. It was so much different things that we were doing to, you know, build this application, but how we were able to build it within a week and still be able to catch the attention of like this company, it was, you know, really, really great because they actually liked our idea, and it was like, yeah, they could see themselves implementing something like that within their own business. And that's when, you know, we felt really, you know, proud of, you know, our skills. And, you know, because there's this certain sense of, you know, feeling like you get in you, like, maybe I don't know enough, but we realized we knew more than what we actually, you know, thought we did. And we really excelled really well with the application.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from anybody? Any questions at all?
Question was, how did you decide to go into the field you're in now?
Bishop, was that for everybody or?
Okay.
Okay. Well, I guess this one's speaking. I mean, I've always been interested in actually helping people, you know, which is a very broad topic, but I think very specifically, I do enjoy taking a problem and dissecting it, you know, and kind of leading the charge on that. So I found that medicine was that thing for me. In high school, I did 3 years in a healthcare class, and like in the last year, I was able to do shadowing. Like I did 40 hours in a hospital, and I did 40 hours in like a dentist office too, just to kind of see what's out there. And yeah, and then even my senior year of high school, I did. Like I said earlier, I did the CNA training and stuff, just to kind of see the different aspects of medicine. And like, you know, I did all that just to make sure I really wanted to do this, because I already knew back then it was a lot. I mean, I didn't know like the actual, you know, how much it was, but I knew it was a lot, and I knew I needed to be sure before I started this path, because there's a lot of other things I could have did, because I was also very interested in IT. So I could have been with Mr. Romulus over here. So, you know, yeah. So just kind of getting my, like, spreading out, trying different things, a lot of shadowing, and just seeing what the field has.
So for me, it started off with curiosity. It's a weird story. I was in Haiti, and this one experience, I was like holding a baby, and the baby threw up on me, and I remember wondering, like, why is it like going up, and where is it coming from? And then from then on, that little experience just kind of like piqued my interest into just like anatomy, and then one thing led to another, and then it just kind of progressed on. I did have a similar thing as Brandon, where at some point in college, I was thinking about doing like computer science or ITE, so you brought me back with the Java and the C++ stuff. But I think I just had to make a decision, and I think medicine was just like where I saw my calling, and just continued with that.
For me, it was around when COVID just first started. Like, at that time, my mom was trying to get me into nursing. You know, she was just saying, "I la pour nurse," you know, "I fait bon l'argent," you know, that kind of stuff. And really, she was just trying to look out, you know, for me, just so I can provide for my family. And, you know, I started off with like medical assistant, just, you know, to get like, you know, a small stepping stone. And when COVID came in, at that time, I couldn't find work because no one wanted to hire anyone really. You know what I mean? If they're firing doctors, ain't no way they're gonna hire like a medical assistant. And, you know, I had to like, you know, go through certifications and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I look what they were making, I'm just like, I could have easily made that at Walmart. You know what I mean? Just like starting off, and I don't feel like I didn't feel really passionate about it. For me, the only thing that was driving me was honestly just the money. And when people were getting sick, they were getting COVID and all that kind of stuff, and I'm like, nah, I don't see myself putting myself in that situation. So for me, it's something you really have to be passionate about, and you really got to see yourself doing it. You know what I mean? It's an honorable job. Like, I don't care what anyone says, being a nurse or even a CNA, it's an honorable job because you're actually helping take care of lives. And, when I saw, like, I care for people, but not to that degree because, there's certain things you have to be comfortable with, and I just couldn't do it. So, I was like, what am I going to do next? So, of course, I'm working like in between jobs, and then I try to look, what am I good at already? My whole life, I've always been this analytical person. Being able to break down bigger problems into smaller problems and coming up with solutions, and, I always loved math. I've always loved, things like physics. So I really had to like figure out what I was good at. I love numbers, I love like puzzles, patterns. I always looked, at patterns of things. So for me, computer science was the best thing for me. And I started messing around with it on the computer on a website called Code Academy, not Code Academy. It was called Khan Academy. And they had like this little JavaScript course. And I started, messing around with it. I'm like, oh snap, like this is really good. I enjoy it. And from there, I was very curious and I was like researching so many different things. And, that's when I fell into the rabbit hole. And from there, I just was, deeper and deeper into coding to the point my wife got sick and tired of me because that's all I was talking about. That's all I was doing. It could be like late at night, midnight. I'm literally on a computer just coding, and it became an obsession for me. And then, that's how I knew, okay, this is what God wants me to do for my life.
Okay, so like him, like he was like saying late at night, like he'll find his hobby of coding. Like for me, also with cars, I find myself I'm always looking up on YouTube videos, like, oh, how to do this. I'm really a hands-on person. If you guys sit me down, I'd probably go crazy. Like, oh, I gotta go do something with my hands and stuff like that. So yeah, so these cars is a form of art, and it's just because at first, being younger, I wasn't sure what I wanted to get into. Also, like him, I was trying to do nursing, and I was like, I don't know, I don't want, because I've done at first I started out as a CNA. You guys would never expect that, working with patients, old people. I liked it, but like, it just wasn't me. So like, or like the people like, oh, you get the patients bossing you around or the doctors bossing you around. Like, okay, I gotta do something else. So, so cars is like he said, like if you find yourself doing something every day, that's a good sign to go towards. It's like, hey, yeah, you might if you don't try. Sometimes if you don't try it, you might never know. So.
In other words, cars don't talk back.
That's yeah. You basically have a patient that don't talk back.
Can I be brutally honest? Are you on that? I wanted to become a pharmacist, to be honest with you, well, for two reasons. One of them is I love drugs. But not in that sense.
Sounds crazy. I'm glad you cleared that up.
Not in that sense. But so there's nothing to me since I was a kid when I started having some sort of understanding and curiosity, like she said. I always wondered, why is it that if you take a pill, you get some type of reaction from it? Like something so little sometimes, or syrup or whatever, and then you get some type of reaction. So I was always curious about it. It was never really to me about like patient caring. It was more the science of it. Like what is happening inside the body once you take that pill. And I remember being in high school, I was in chemistry class and they played the movie Osmosis Jones. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie. And that did it for me. Being able to see that movie. Until today, when I think of medicine and I think of medications, I still think of it through that lens, like it's all a movie that's going on inside the body, right? And ultimately, being able to say you're a licensed, you're a legal drug dealer, there's nothing better than that to me. So, like I said, I'm keeping it brutally honest. And also, too, as a Haitian person, I always saw medicine from a global perspective, to be now serious. So I always thought of me being able to pharmacy school, I'd be able to gain that knowledge because I've seen my mom taking medications. I've seen so many different people taking medications. So I've always had that interest to be able to help some people to be able to get them to understand. First of all, if you prescribe this medication, why did the doctor even give it to you? If you're taking medications A, B, C, and D, is there interactions between them? Can I help you understand, is the dosing okay? Do you need something else? Do you not need this? So all these different things, and then being able to serve as that bridge between the patients and the doctors so that our own people, and I'm speaking of my parents, my family members, friends, and that's why till today I'm still very much involved in the community as much as I can, because patients, you'd be surprised, the smartest people in the world, I mean, you take IT mechanics or whatever, I can ask this guy who's very bright in what he does as a mechanic, but he probably knows nothing about a medication, right? So being able to serve as the voice for those people makes my day. And that's why I've always seen it, aside from wanting to be a legal drug dealer and all that stuff. So
Test test. Okay, hey. So this is a bit more of a direct question because I just hit the halfway point in my own coding boot camp through University of Central Florida. So my question to you is, because I've asked multiple people this, the counselors, and it's always kind of in the air. When you finished your course, like, how was the employment process for you? Because I know after, because we hit the midway point, we've gotten a broad overview of what we're going to be learning. I know me personally, I prefer front-end things because back-end dealing with MySQL and databases just hurts my head, honestly. So I just wanted to ask, how did that employment process go for you? And I know you went, was it a full stack engineering course? So do you use that for your everyday thing, or are you only using a specific part of it, I'm guessing? I guess is what I want to say.
On paper, I'm a full stack, developer, but really, my job, what I do is really back. I love back end technology. I hate front end. I'm not gonna lie to you. And I think there's a certain personality thing that comes into it as well, because if you're someone who's more of a designer, visually, design things, then front end is the best. Back end, the reason why it appeals to me is because I only care about functionality, how things work. The stuff that people don't see, the architecture. That's what I care about. So for me, back end appeals, to me the most. But since you're doing front end, for you, the best thing to do is build projects. I would say try to build a full stack project, just because it's gonna be, it's really competitive out here. But focus on the technologies that's gonna get you hired. I don't know if they're having you focus on maybe React or Angular or,
We're good now. And I know you mentioned capstone projects, and I'm currently in the midst of my second one, in which we're building our own RESTful API.
That.
No. And we're building our own RESTful API, I think is the correct term for it. And I'm like it's a group thing because we're also learning how to use the GitHub workflow and all that nonsense. So I'm working on, I think, Git routes right now, and so I can see how everything would be useful. However, I just don't think this would be something I can be passionate for my entire life. I can do it, that's no problem, but like I said, one of my main strengths is just seeing, okay, what fonts are we gonna use? What's the color palette for the website? My JavaScript is, I'd say it's pretty decent, but just building out structures and wireframes for websites and all that. So I guess this leads back into my other question is, how did the hiring process look like for you?
Oh, okay. But before that, like you said, like your strength is like basically wireframing the application, like picking out the fonts and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, just like, I mean, I can't pull it up right now, but in our last project, I was in charge of front end, and it was a whole stargazing thing with a few APIs in there, and I designed the page basically and came up with how everything should look and should function and run.
Okay. What I recommend is, like I said, like focus on your front end skills, since that is what you're strongest at anyways. No, you want to have the knowledge to like how to consume an API from the back end. You know what I mean? Just have that knowledge, know how to do it, but it doesn't have to be something you specialize in. So specialize in the front end, and then pick up a little bit of UI UX design, because since you like really designing, you actually might be better in that field anyways, and they pay a lot of money, just like something simple as like figuring out where to position a button, like Netflix, like like the little button, like a UI UX designer is the one who actually came up with the idea, like, okay, let's have this button that automatically play the next episode for someone, like just being able to make those type of decisions, would be better, like I can see your strength in that anyways, you know what I mean? So focus on front end and pick up a little bit of UI UX design. To answer your other question about the like the application process, like it can be tough, for a lot of people. Like it can literally take 6 months, sometimes even a year, or even shorter, depending on like where you're applying to. And what I tell people is there's a certain application of faith that comes into this. That's because I did not know whether I would get hired right away. I actually got hired before I even completed my boot camp. And I praise God for that every single day. And it's really taking the time and just fasting and praying and seeking God's presence, that whatever your needs are, God is going to take care of that anyways. But the application process, it can be rigorous because sometimes you have multiple rounds of interview that you go through. I went to 2 rounds of interview. Every single time I was supposed to interview, in the beginning, actually, it took me a month to even get those 2 rounds of interviews, because like the company that I was applying to, they were so busy, like they would cancel an interview out of nowhere. So like I'm just sitting there on a Teams meeting waiting for the interview to start, and then they'd be like, yeah, unfortunately, this person can't show up for the interview. And it felt like being on death row. Like, I was supposed to get executed today. It didn't happen. Go back to your cell. We're going to try again tomorrow. That's how it felt like to me. And it made my anxiety even worse. And I was like, you know what, God, like, I really need your presence on this one. But what it allowed me to do was other people that were in the same coding bootcamp that I was, that were actually applying and that got interviewed, I was picking their brains on some of the questions I was asked. So the things that they were asking them was the same stuff that I was researching, just so that I could make sure that when I am asked those questions, I know what to say. And it helped me a lot. And so, there was a blessing in disguise in that one. But it can be rigorous, the interviewing process. It can take months. There's a lot of times multiple rounds of interviews with different tech companies. But it's just like anything else for me. It's just like you really got to put in your mind, like they're always going to ask you about soft skills. So for you want to talk about, like, you don't want to be generic, say like, I'm really good at solving problems and that, this, that, and the third. You want to tell them like situations where you actually solve problems, because that's what they're looking for. You know what I mean? And even if you never had one before, make one up. You know what I mean? Like, really, it's fake it till you make it out here. And I really had to really put that in my mind. Like some of the experiences that I had, like were actually from other jobs. All I did was act like it was from a tech job, and but ultimately it's just no matter like even if it's like in a span of months, just know that you're gonna go through multiple rounds of interview. Usually it's two. Some companies like bigger companies like Google or Microsoft, they sometimes make you do a third round, but even then you're not really gonna face that, wherever you're applying. So it's just, work on your soft skills, and it's good to know your technical skills, but work on your soft skills because they really look at that a lot. I hope I answered your question by, that. Okay, cool.
Just a second. I think she was next. But JJ, before you leave, just to piggyback on what he said, two things you said earlier that you should focus on when you're in the coding thing. Computer science field. Don't focus so much on trying to figure out the language and then you go down a rabbit hole. Like he was saying, focus on understanding it more than trying to memorize every details of it. And then you're gonna have that imposter feeling, because I had the same problem. So what I noticed is when I actually got into the field is if you understand the languages you study to the point where you can troubleshoot, because that's what they're looking for, really. Can you troubleshoot? If I give you something, there's 50 ways you could solve the same problem. But can I give it to you and then you figure out like your way out of it? Like sometimes I tell my boss straight up, look, man, I don't know, give me a day. And then it's like, okay. And then after a day, sure enough, I come up with the solution. Troubleshoot, and then they'll love you for it because they're like, yeah, this guy right here, he's gonna figure it out, because like you see what I'm saying? So they look for that trait, that problem solving trait in that field. Yeah, that's like literally the biggest thing.
Yeah. Before you go, actually, I had a quick question for you. Do you have a LinkedIn profile?
Yes, it's not finished it's not completely set up yet, but I have the basic things like my name, the University of Central Florida. I have it set to where it like pings me on for jobs for like full stack developer and all that. But yeah, it's not completely fleshed out, but I do have one set
So
up.
this is what I want to do for you. Like, since I already went through the process and you're going through it yourself, I want you to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and then we can just pick a time sometime within a week, and then we can go through something,
See,
so
I like
I'm going
that.
to give you my LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Cause-
you could come up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Before we get to the next question, mentorship is really one of the components that we need to take away from this thing, where we can all get together with someone and actually train them and help them get to the next process. From what I understand, and he actually brought up a good point, because so that we already went through that process, knowing exactly how to go through the interview process is probably something that we probably gonna need to touch on later on in terms of education, teaching our youth how to conduct themselves and how to go through the application process and ultimately get to the job. So I'm really glad they're making the connection.
My question is for Brendan. You mentioned there was a program, More Black Boys in White Coats. How can you expose that with youth here so they can be aware of it and where they can go to sign up?
Really, you can. Really, just have to, I can give them the website where they, have all the information and stuff.
Mhm.
As for being a part of it, I don't know if you have to be part of a school, because there's a lot of rules that we had to go through. A lot of, they gave us like rules, a set of rules before we could start the charter
Right.
itself. Let's start the group inside at Morehouse themselves, because it's a national organization. So in order to get, if we're gonna put their name on it, they gotta have, they want you to follow these rules. So youth would probably have to go through their school themselves to find membership in it. But I can give them
High
the website.
schoolers,
I think it's more of a college thing.
college level.
Yes,
Okay.
but they do a lot of programs. They the website has they do a lot of programs, a lot of outreach and stuff that they will do in like just different areas, You know, they might have like something for it. 'Cause I seen they have stuff for like little kids to like just do stuff too. So it really just depends on what they have going on at the time.
Thank you. Yeah, I would like to see it. If you can share that with me, I will appreciate that. I have some clients that need that information. And for the IT group, my little one is into robotic everything. I'm trying to find a good IT, something he can do for the summer. The one I find was in India. I didn't trust the source. And the money they were asking me was like in the thousands. I'm like, and it's for 12 sessions. Do you guys know anything like robotic codings, stuff of that nature for little ones?
How old is he referring
8.
to? 8. As far as I don't know any programs off the top of my head, but the only thing I can tell you is YouTube is YouTube University. You learn a lot on YouTube University, and a language that I know that he'll definitely be using if he's dealing with robotics is Python. Python is a language. It has clean syntax. It doesn't really require like a lot of, like, it's close to English basically. It's very close to English. It's easy to pick up, and it's used a lot in automation and AI. Like a lot of the artificial intelligence we have right now is actually built in Python. So I would, Python, and then learning a little bit of like maybe electronics would be beneficial for him. So like looking stuff up on YouTube, like little, mini projects you can build, like robotic stuff you could build, using, programming and maybe some electronics, something like that. Like I would recommend. Like, I mean, if I could find the information, I would help with that. Yeah.
Udemy is another good resource too.
I know that's not my field per se, but one suggestion I would give you is look into the tech schools, like the universities that are technology focused. Like, for example, Georgia Tech is here in the Atlanta area. For sure, MIT in Boston. Because sometimes those schools, they have like field days for kids, like kind of like a field trip type of program or whatever, where they can start exposing the kids to whatever program that they may have going on. So that's one way to even be able to get connected with those people that run these types of programs, and hopefully that'll give him some type of exposure to what he's trying to do. Yeah.
I was gonna mention the tech schools also. Some of them do have summer program for kids specifically, because with kids sometimes it's the having somebody in front of them with the attention span. Although Udemy, YouTube, all of these things are like great tools, but sometimes like finding those summer program camps. Sometimes a lot of the tech school now are trying to get more kids into stuff like that. So look into some websites, see if they have some program. I'll probably help you look as well. Yeah.
Quoique je m'apprends créole, mais moi je voulais participer quand même. Question moi gagne pour jeunes gens et mademoiselle qui a étudié médecine. Les fini moi gagne une question pour jeunes gens qui dans pharmacie. Question moi gagne pour jeunes gens et mademoiselle qui a étudié médecine. Comment nous te senti nous une première fois l'étude a te voyé nous à faire une étude ou bien un examen quand même sur un monde qui mourit. Question moi gagne pour monsieur qui fait pharmacie. Pour qui raison jusqu'à présent pas cap gon graine qui guérit?
So, those are very great questions. And to be quite honest, I'm interested to know exactly how y'all going to respond to that.
So from year one of medical school, we have anatomy lab where you have cadavers, which is basically people who dedicated their body to science. And you're working on them from day one. For me, as weird as that sounds, I found it to be fascinating just seeing from a little string that looks like a spaghetti is a nerve that goes from down like your brain and your body just for your leg to move. So I actually really appreciated it. And we also had like ceremonies too where we took the time to appreciate these people for their dedication. So the families of these people who dedicated their body came in and we had a whole ceremony. So it sounds, like scary and to just be working on somebody who died. But if you can look past that and appreciate what you're learning from and what they've done or contribute to community, it wasn't that bad.
I actually didn't get to do the ceremony because we started in COVID, so it was, they weren't letting people in. But the first time we went to the lab, it was like, this is a dead body in front of you. I mean, you treat it with respect, and you learn. This is a learning tool for us to help us become better. But at the same time, you understand this was a person living, breathing. They had loved ones and everything. And we even have we have a class called Human Values that they taught us. We had like a whole lecture on called Death and Dying to just kind of understand. This is it just kind of help prepare you because at the end of the day, you probably won't be used to I wouldn't want to get used to having people pass away, but it's part of the profession, especially like if you work in an emergency room and somebody comes in, they're having a heart attack or they just came from like a car accident. I've seen people like pass away on the table, and at the end of the day, you gotta be able to work and then come out of it, take a second to kind of just whether you gotta say a prayer or take a deep breath and just kind of understand that this person's passed away now. But it is something that I guess everybody's gonna react to it differently. But they do try to give us some training to prepare us for that.
One thing I appreciate, at least for some of the docs at where I work, when somebody passes away, if they don't mention it, once or twice I've kind of initiated it, but having a moment of silence just for the life that's passed, it's just to appreciate that this was someone who was living and breathing, and they probably didn't see any of this coming, like somebody who was at dinner and choked on a piece of meat and died, and it's just something not to be expected, but this was also a life, and just not to be like, okay, well, on to the next patient, but to appreciate it.
There's one thing that she said, and I think we should piggyback on that to pretty much juxtaposed our Christian faith. Psalm 139, verse 14. Je te loue de ce que je suis une créature si merveilleuse. Tes œuvres sont admirables, mon âme le reconnaît bien. When you talked about how a little string pretty much conducts and the whole wiring, when you look at it, it's a surreal situation because on one end, we are nothing, but on another end, we are such a complex machine. So I'm glad that you brought up that point. But again, to that miracle pill, how come we don't have one yet?
Non, donc, comme vous posez des questions en créole, donc je vais essayer de répondre en créole. Bon, premièrement, pour répondre à une question, est-ce qu'on est capable de clarifier qui ça veut dire par une pile ou bien un médicament qui guérit? Qui ça veut dire par guérit?
OK. Les welcome docteur a prescrit un remède. Ou chercher et remède là dans pharmacie, parfois yo dit comme ça, ou là pour la vie ou papa.
OK.
Ou là pour prendre grain ça pour la vie.
OK. So I'm gonna get there. Non, c'est raison ça, c'est la raison pour laquelle non, c'est la raison pour laquelle qui fait que demander pour clarifier ça veut dire par là parce que pour ajouter sous ça Leslie dit premièrement corps nous pas réaliser complexité que nous gagnons dans corps OK pas gagner un monde au monde m'a garantir ça pas gagner un monde au monde qui capable créer une pilule pour guérir toute maladie qui gagne corps nous trop compliqué pour ça OK ça son bagage si bon Dieu seulement qui capable faire OK Pour me donner un exemple de qui ça que je voulais dire par là, est-ce que j'aime poser cette question pour qui ça fait pour chaque maladie il y a une qualité spécialiste. Si malade dans les yeux, ou aller un ophtalmologue. Si vous avez un problème cœur, ou aller un cardiologue. Ou avez un problème kidney rein, ou aller un nephrologist. OK? Parce que quand nous tellement compliqué, pas un docteur, un médecin qui gagne aussi de connaissances pour capable gérer tout ça qui n'a pas en complet. It doesn't exist. OK? So, l'on parle de guérir, ça dépend de qui ça que vous mentionné parce que sous font infection, il y a des médicaments qui sont capables de guérir l'infection. Parce que si c'est une bactérie ou chose quelconque, vous capable de prendre un médicament, monsieur, nous chaque là nous faisons infection déjà, nous prenons un médicament pour lui et puis infection aller. Donc ça différent de si vous avez une maladie qui est chronique. OK, par exemple, tension. OK. Yes, so c'est là que m'a privé avec vous. Je suis bien content que Leslie t'ait fait mention de machine, par exemple. OK? Tension, par exemple, ou bien diabète, ou bien cholestérol. Donc, premièrement, mettez en tête que quand nous tous qui là, nous tous humains, nous sommes pas permanents. OK? Donc, à un certain temps, quoi, énergie et tout ça, qu'on les construit pour le faire, à un certain temps, la vie diminuer. OK? So, dans ce sens, ça, pas un monde qui est censé exemple de quelques maladies. L'essentiel, ça que nous-mêmes nous capables de faire, nous capables d'essayer de ralentir vitesse que, ou bien ralentir niveau ou bien quantité de maladies que nous capables de mener sous tête nous par rapport à gens que nous-mêmes nous vivons peut-être. Façon qu'on mange, OK, sous fait exercice, sous suivre un régime qui balancé, qui est capable d'aider. Parce que pilule dans yo baoul, le bon médicament, li là pour les faire, yon bagay que corps naturellement li qu'on habitué faire. Li capable soit ralentir fonction ou bien li capable camper ou bien li capable améliorer ou bien faire aller plus vite. Donc c'est un bagay qui passe dans le corps à cause de maladies qui fait corps naturellement li pas ka faire. OK, là on prend tension par exemple, corps nous ça dépend de l'activité qu'on va entreprendre, corps naturellement connaît qui leur pour lui faire tension monter. Par exemple, si on courir au besoin pour tension monter pour sang capable de circuler plus rapide dans le corps. OK? Donc si vous couchez ou bien gens que nous tous nous chita là, tension naturellement li baisser. Mais imaginez aussi que par exemple ou vivre en façon côté qu'on pas prendre soin corps, ou manger n'importe quoi à n'importe quelle heure qu'on veut. Donc là ça par exemple vous capable de faire artère qui entre dans le corps yo vinn boucher. Donc là ça est capable de causer tension li monter. OK, si par exemple raison de faire peut-être vous capable de un plombier la caille, c'est parce qu'on a un tuyau qui est capable de boucher. Donc si tuyau en bouché, par exemple ça, et puis il pas jamais réparer, qui ça a privé tuyau ça finalement la pété. C'est même bagarre qui dans le corps. Donc le fait que c'est aussi compliqué nous pas well comme ça. Mais à niveau microscopique et tout ça et avec aide médecin et avec pharmacien nurse tout ça, donc c'est ce genre de bagages ça que y a contrôler. Donc quand nous pas il pas aussi simple côté que yon grain pilule capable guérir tout bagage gens que soyons audience ou regarder yon nerf qui sorti juste dans crâne qui alimente corps grain nerf ça il passe plusieurs côtés, il alimente plusieurs fonctions encore. Donc chaque grain fonction ça yo gagne accès pour partie corps que il a pas alimenté. Donc dans ça seulement dans exemple ça seulement yon grain pilule pas assez pour tout côté grain nerf ça il a pas alimenté dans corps. Est-ce que ça me dit? Donc quand nous trop compliqué, nous vraiment complexe. Jean que Leslie so dit ça fait des fois qu'on dit moun si nous prend attention de comment corps nous important comment, sans que nous pas posséder rien, comment santé nous avec santé seulement que nous riches. Yeah. Comment que, par exemple, si vous avez un problème que vous pouvez faire un transplant, vous savez combien un transplant coûte? Hundreds of thousands. But nous, chaque qui là, que nous marcher normalement, ou pas penser avec ça. OK? Nous, chaque qui là, nous avons 2 reins, 2 kidneys. A kidney transplant also costs a whole lot of money. OK? Combien de milliers de dollars, centaines de milliers de dollars. Si vous voulez, vous êtes capable d'aller dans une clinique ou offrir un kidney. Vous êtes capable de dire, ou fou, vous êtes capable de faire test mental pour qui raison besoin de faire. Mais c'est pour montrer que quand nous tellement compliqué, et c'est des fois nous avons pensé comment corps est vraiment important. Santé nous seulement fait nous riches. OK? Si nous devons penser avec ça seulement garder tête nous dans le miroir, moi-même, moi pense même dépression, conseil de problème nous pas gagner. Mais nous pensons trop avec des choses des fois qui pas même important et ça vient nous plus problème dans notre propre corps pas nous. OK?
Hello, everyone. My question is to the pharmacist. Comment que ou est tête as a pharmacist avec un herbalist? So I know you give medication, chemicals with some herbals and stuff, but they go different routes with the herbs. So how do you see yourself, and what do you think, and why you're not an herbalist? Anything like that. That's what I want to know.
Well, I'm not against anything that is so-called natural. I am not against anything like that. But at the same time, like I was explaining before, you got to understand. So, for example, if you're following a lifestyle where you are on a regular basis using certain organic products or whatever it may be, if it's been proven to help in some ways, by all means, take it. It shouldn't hurt. The chances of that hurting you is slim to none, right? Because it's a question of prevention. So if it's helping you to prevent some type of disease or whatever ailment, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But in pharmacy school, we don't focus on studying herbs. That's not what we focus on. Because in a lot of ways, what we focus on, just like medicine in general, is illnesses that come from, for example, people not caring for themselves as much, right? Or an accident. Like, for example, if you, let's say, God forbid you go out there, or one of us goes out there and get into a car accident, and then you bleeding profusely. An herb cannot help you in this moment. You see, so everything has its purpose. So that's why I'm not saying I'm against it. It's just like if you're eating, right? If you're eating a healthy meal, it's more balanced than if you're eating a burger every single day, right? But they each have a purpose of making you full. So I'm not against herbs. I'm not against organic stuff. I mean, I take vitamins every day. You know, I drink green tea or whatever tea every day because I believe they have their own function. But if I'm sick, if I'm throwing up, I have an infection, something's going on, I'm not going to ignore that and not take an antibiotic that I know can kill the bacteria that's hurting me. You see what I mean? The same way, too, if I have blood pressure issues, that means my body is telling me the damage is already done inside your body. So just using herbs alone is not going to help you because if you think about it, just like any machine or whatever, just like if you're driving your car every day, you don't do maintenance on it, right? The mechanic can tell you that. You don't change your oil, you don't change your brakes, you don't this, you don't that. What do you think is going to happen to the car? It's going to break down. So your body's not any different from that. A lot of times I think the mistake that people make is once they get to the point of sickness, that's when the light bulb goes on, like, oh, I need a magic pill to fix all this. But you're forgetting that you've lived 20, 30, 40 years of your life not maintaining that body, but now you expect a miracle to happen. Doesn't work that way. So that's why I always tell people, I always tell patients, truly the best medicine for you is prevention. The doctors are here to help you. The pharmacist is here to help you understand the medication that you're taking. But all of that, for the most part, unless you have some type of autoimmune disease that you're born with or whatever, it come at you or you end up with cancer, that's different. But for chronic things like blood pressure, or diabetes, cholesterol, these things are things we can prevent from happening. But the choice is yours. How are you living your life every day? Because you can't expect you eating, not to sound crazy or whatever, but you eating bun and fritasso every day. That's a lot of oil every single day that you're putting into your body, right? But yet, once you come down with cholesterol, now you expect for the doctor to just give you one pill to fix everything. I don't know if they want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain medications too that if you look up the original, like where it came from, it is like, plant-based. I think aspirin is like an example of that. So it still plays its role by all means, but completely agree with him. And then one of the things that he pointed out to research, how much have what you're putting into your body, how much research has gone into it to show, what it does and what the reactions are. That's including herbs. I think in some cases, there's not a lot of research that's been done. And so you have to also consider that too. Just because it's an herb too doesn't mean that it's completely safe. I mean, same with like just the medications that you receive too from the hospital.
And you gotta keep in mind too, your body may be completely different to the young lady sitting next to you. So just because you're taking an herb, you respond to it in a positive way doesn't mean she could either, because our bodies are so different, and like she mentioned, and that's what we focus on in pharmacy is it's a lot of research that is done. So a lot of times the medications that you are using, they may come from like herb sources or organic, sources or what have you, but the company takes that ingredient in a synthetic way to create a bigger portion of that to be able to make it serve its purpose for many patients.
Can I say something? Like, yes. Piggybacking off what you're saying, with the herbs and everything, like, we come from a culture, we believe in that a lot, and me, I believe in the herbs as well. But I've seen, there was a situation my mom was in, like almost 2 years ago now. It was this fae, right? And when I tell you, it's like, she wasn't lying. It's the actual plant. It grows in Haiti, but it grew somewhere near our house. And she did, she took it and she, made it into tea, whatever and stuff. She took it. My sisters took it. And mind you, my family, they live in Philly. I'm originally from Philadelphia. So I'm down here in Georgia. My brother called me. He was like, yo, mom and our sister's in the hospital. I'm like, what? And then when I was asking my own questions, I'm like, what plant was this? Because, they, it's an herb, whatever, but like, it's an herb that grows in Haiti. But here in America, for some reason, I don't know, like, it depends on the area you're at. It became toxic. It could have been the soil, really, that could have did that. And it became toxic to her to where she was literally, they were pumping out her stomach in the hospital. That's how bad it was. And I was telling her, I was like, mommy, for attention avec face live, I was like, and around COVID, when people were sick, like all day, every day, they're telling, like my mother-in-law's calling me, telling me like, hey, faire médecin. I'm like, you can't be taking 10 different medications. I don't, like, even med naturel, but you don't know the effects it's gonna have on your body with all these things mixed together. So
I do, and this is where I drop the intellectualism, because I do understand the concept of making sure there's research backed before you engage in some situations. I understand that completely. I also understand the way some of these things are being tempered with. You know, the soul could have been that defining factor that make this thing becoming toxic because of whatever it was exposed to. Now, if you look into the practices here, they're not the same, in Haiti or any other places. You know what I mean? So, but we can't act like we don't understand that. And again, the pharmaceutical companies, they have a stake in making sure that there's money that needs to be made. And I think that's probably what Furmo was alluding to, but he didn't go directly into that question. Not to say that it's always the case, but if we look at the patterns, we know there's money to be made. Now, what I understand from everything you guys said, and you touched on that, a lot of times when we start seeing those symptoms, the damage is already done. And keep in mind, we live in a first world society where customer service is always important. I'm gonna have to figure something to give you to make sure you feel better right away. Even though sometimes that may not be the best course of action, but that's the response that we need. If someone is bleeding profusely, I'm not gonna try to figure out what needs to get done. If I can give you something to make sure the bleeding is not happening at that site, or making sure that your high blood pressure, we can take care of that. Granted, even though you may still need to go back and make some changes in your personal life, we need to remember that we live in a first world country, and therefore the responses that we get are catered towards that ideology. So that's why I wanted to touch on that.
So to add to the sickness with your mom and your sister too, sometimes we also forget that there's something called gut flora, because I experienced that myself. So that Faye could have been completely okay, right, for the people taking it in Haiti. But like you said, your mom lives in Philly, your sister's in Philly. Believe it or not, inside of your body is different from somebody who's living in South America, in Haiti, Africa, wherever, right? Because the water they're drinking, the food that they're eating, the natural and healthy bacteria that's inside of me and you, that group of bacteria is not the same in them. So that in itself could have been the reason why it became toxic to them. Because although somebody in Haiti may respond to it in a positive way because they're used to that environment, and now you introduce that to your mom who is here. Like, I always like to think of our bodies here as being virgins, because it's so much more purified. You know, you think about the water we drink, everything is so much more, in a sense, cleansed in a sense, with the chemicals and all this kind of stuff. So your body's not the same as I went to Haiti for the first time after a long time of living here, and my arrogant self told me, hey, I'm Haitian, so I'm good. And I drank the water there from the faucet. Why did I do it? Because I'm convinced that I'm Haitian, so I'm fine. And that was the worst mistake I could have made, because my body's telling me, yes, you're Haitian, but your body's been American for a very long time. And these are real things. So again, that fairy could have been completely okay, but the gut flora inside of your mom and your sister is not the same as somebody living in Haiti or Africa. And that's why they tell you when you go to certain countries, don't drink the water. Don't eat food that's not peeled or that's not cooked. It's not to scare you. It's because these things are real. Your body is not the same. So these are things to think about, and to touch on what Leslie said. I'm in the pharmaceutical industry, like really in the pharmaceutical industry, because that's what I don't even work in a pharmacy. My job is completely science and business related. I can't necessarily say there is, truth to that. Not to say things have not happened, but just like any other industry through history or what have you, there has been adjustments that's needed to be made so that unfairness and injustice is not continuing to be done, right? So the reason I say that is the process of manufacturing medications in 2023 is not what it was in 1950, 1940, 1930, whatever, 1800s, because there's been a lot more that we know. So there's a lot more regulations, a lot more oversight, and I'm sure you guys can probably allude to that too. So it's not, so I can pretty much guarantee you that companies, it's not in their best interest in today's time to operate like they used to in the early 1900s or before, because they would be shut down. I can guarantee you that it's not like that. Not to say things have not happened. I completely, because there's so many examples of things that, Tuskegee right there, not too far from us.
Because
is
I
one
was
of
about
those
to
big-
pull some lawsuits.
Yes, but I'm not also going to deny that there is money to be made, and I tell people that all the time. It's at the end of the day, making medications for patients is a business just like any other business. So there is a profit concept involved in that as well.
And also because we are in a first world country, we have to provide a service, and it has to be rapid and a quick response.
And that's why I tell patients all the time to beware of that, because that puts the responsibility on you as much. Because true story, when I used to train at the pharmacy, I had a lady come to the counter. She was truly like, she literally laid on the counter, hyperventilating. You could tell she was out of breath. I don't know what was really wrong with her. And then she told me, well, she's just been diagnosed with blood pressure, whatever. And then she was like, is there something I can take over the counter for my blood pressure? and I told her, look, first of all, no, there is not. Because we're not in Haiti or in any other country, we can just do that, right? You have to go see a doctor. But I also told her, there's going to be a part of this that's going to have to come from you to try to do better, right? Because too many times we put the responsibility too much on the physicians, on the nurses, on the healthcare system, and then we don't take any responsibility at all as the patient. And when we're getting worse, we blame them, but we don't look at what we're doing as. So that's why I always tell patients, it starts with you. It starts with you, because the doctor can only do so much. First of all, they're not even with you when you go home. None of these people are with you when you go home. So if you're not doing your part, it's gonna get worse. Instead of them reducing the dosing of what they're prescribing you, they're gonna have to increase it, or they're gonna have to add 1 or 2 more medications on it so they can help you. That's their way of trying to help you, because they can't take on the responsibility that you need to take for yourself. I don't know if that makes sense.
You were next before. Just to close that part out as well. You know, these guys over here is not gonna solve capitalism issues. You know, let's be honest. Let's be honest, because I did notice the discussion kind of veered off to, you know, that's a whole other situation. Because when we start talking about what is for profit, who's gonna make what money in that situation, this is a whole political issue. I'm gonna go ahead and try to kind of bring the subject back to what they can do to help the community and everything, because some of these situations we're gonna have to talk to our politicians about seriously, because they really it's really out of their hands. All right.
One thing I would say that's a very true statement. But one thing I would say to that is, as patients, know your physician well, and know that you have a physician who cares for you to help navigate through that system that he mentioned, because not a lot of physicians care as much. No, that's a true, and same goes for pharmacists too. Same goes for pharmacists. That's why I always like to tell patients, look, I've had family members and friends change physicians because I've proven to them based on how they're being treated, that doctor is not in your best interest.
Yes.
But I show them signs to see that's why I'm saying what I'm saying. And then once they see it for themselves, then they're more comfortable to make that shift. So it's very important because, yes, the problems of the system, us three, we're not going to fix it. We can help you navigate through it to make the better decisions that you can make.
Just 1 second. She was next, and then Fueremo.
It's patient specific.
Okay. So my question is for the whole panel. So from your career goals and stuff, like, would you guys have chosen your career if you guys did not see anybody that looked like you in that career pathway? Like, would you guys have still pursued your career? And I'm asking for like a young college student that's like confused about where they want to go and trying to overcome obstacles that may stop them, like not seeing somebody that looks like them in their career goal. So I'm asking, like, what pushed you guys to go towards that goal, if you guys did run into that issue where you didn't see anybody that looked like you?
I mean, in IT, now there's like a good handful of black people in IT, but, you know, there's not much. The closest people that look like us is Indians, you know what I mean? And you have them in the field, but the only thing is like, they're a little snobby sometimes, you know what I mean? It's like, because they figure they know everything and stuff, like, so it's like, even at work, like sometimes I didn't get the help that I felt like I could have gotten, versus if it was another Indian person they were helping, it was, you know, they got the help. But, you know, I like on the team that I was on, I can say it was probably one other person that was black, you know, and she was working there for like maybe like a few years. So they already were familiar with her, they were comfortable with her. And IT, like, it's changing now. But, you know, not all the time do you find people that, you know, that looks like us. A lot of times, if it's not someone who's Indian or someone who's, you know, Asian, maybe you might come across someone, you know, like who's white, but you don't really meet too many black people. And not too many women are in the field as well. That's another thing I've noticed. Women are a minority in the field of IT. You know, there's this, you know, idea, it's like, you know, it's made for nerds or this, that, and the third, like, but that's not necessarily, you know, true. You, anyone could, you know, work in IT. It's just, if you love to, you know, solve problems, you can work in IT. Like, it's just really being a problem solver and just loving technology, you know, wanting to learn and, you know, keep learning. But even though I did not see a lot of representation, you know, for, you know, black people in IT, I was still drawn to it because that's really what I wanted to do anyways. And I know there's some out there. That's why, like, you have like black, I forgot the name of it. It's like this black tech group. They're actually, I think they're out here in Atlanta.
Black is Tech?
Yeah, Black is Tech. And they do these like, you know, summits like each year and stuff where they try to bring everyone in just so they could feel like, hey, you know, we have representation in the field. But it is nerve-wracking, you know, when you feel like you're one of the very few people that, you know, that just looks like you know, and, you know, you don't know, like, okay, if I go to this person, you know, will I get the help that I need from them? And, you know, but it doesn't really, what I would like to say is, at the end of the day, if you really are passionate about what you want to do, and even though you don't see the representation, there will always be gatekeepers, but you will succeed. If you really just put, you know, you really, you know, have faith in that, you trust in God, He's the one going to, you know, lead you in there. And hey, maybe you could start your own podcast or, you know, your own YouTube channel, you know, and help, you know, create that representation that you don't see in the field.
Yeah, for me, the imposter syndrome is so real. In my group of new hires, of 14 people, I'm the one black person in my group. So it's really tough for you to really believe and convince yourself that you deserve to be a part of that group. I think even if you don't have a like black person or someone who looks like you in that exact field, it's good to have someone and a neighboring field, at least that can be a support while you're going through the process. And even if there's not a number one person or another person, you can also think of yourself as that one person to start it off, so that people that come after you can look up to you as that other person that looks like them, as a mentor. So
I agree with everything that they said. And I also say that, personally for me, I don't think I've ever had a black physician. Like every time I went to a doctor, it was like, I used to as a kid, it was always like a white person. I'm a pediatrician. He's a great guy and everything, but it was a white man, older white man, But going to Morehouse is actually kind of interesting because I think we have 2 white people in our class. Everybody else is black or So, but again, Morehouse is an exception, because everywhere else you go, it's flipped, So I think regardless of, me, regardless of what anybody tells you, I'm gonna do what I want to do. I ain't gonna let nobody stop me from doing that. I've always been like that. So I've always been independent. I'm like, you're not gonna, you tell me what you want to tell me, but I'm gonna do what I think is right. But I think it definitely does help. That's why, again, the black man in white coat, we've been trying to do that because it's nice to see these kids, especially like elementary school kids. They say, oh, you're in med school, you're gonna be doctors. Like, yeah, and then you see them like ask all these questions. They're definitely interested, because like I think I talked to one kid and he was like, yeah, his doctor is mean to him and everything. He's not, it was like that kind of experience is like it's easier to get it's easier to get a better experience with somebody that looks like you. At the end of the day, so.
So at my current job, actually I'm the only black guy there. but like what everybody's saying, like you should try when you work for a job, always try to do your best, so they don't only see you, also they see God, working through you. But also, like for example, okay, so last year we hit like a record breaking where we tripled our it was like every year, they keep track of like how many customers we get and how many jobs we do and how much we complete. Yeah, the goal, right? So for that year, I think we doubled it. Where I also was the top technician that made the most money. So I was like, wow. I was like, I was a little surprised myself. It was like, but overall, like if you do what you do and you do it right, overall they will respect you and give you credit, and it will take some time for them to break in for most Caucasian people.
Yeah, I can say I definitely agree with what everyone says. The imposter syndrome thing is real, but I like to think that if you want to see a change, you need to be at that table. So I'm arrogant enough in the way that I think to believe that if we're gonna change anything, hey, it's gotta be. But I like to connect that also with the fact that I truly walk with the mindset and the belief that as a child of God, I can do whatever I want. Amen. Like I truly believe that, because sometimes I believe too many times as children of God, we forget how powerful we are. Like I think the moment I was able to truly understand and process, God is my Father. He's all these great things, all powerful, all present, all this, all that. Why should I limit the way that I see things? Why should I limit where I can step my foot in, where I can go, what I can do? The moment I was able to truly understand what that means, I walk and I operate in this mindset that only I can stop me. But it's not to say that I don't have these moments of this imposter syndrome thing, because I've experienced it right now. I mean, many times when I'm on my team meetings, I like to hopefully this is not really recorded, but but sometimes I'll take pictures of the screen and just to joke around, I'll send it to my brothers or whatever. I'm like, geez, I'm still the only black person in here. Like, what's going on? So, but it happens. But I think we can change that if we continue doing things like this. Not just at the church level, but at the community level. Like in my field, being in the pharmaceutical industry as a black person, I'm a member of this group called Young Black Pharma. It's a national group, and it's only black people in there. And it represents black people within the pharmaceutical industry from every single department across the whole nation. So we do mentorship programs. We have conferences, we meet with each other. We even help others that are coming into the field to understand how to ask for their rightful salary. Because a lot of times we come in being so conservative because we've never had a family member or somebody close to us do what we're doing. So we don't even know how much money to ask. I personally had that experience where when I first started, I knew I made a mistake when I said to the manager how much I wanted for a position. He didn't even scratch his head. He said, okay, cool.
Yeah.
At that moment, I knew I made a mistake. Because he didn't even bother wanting to negotiate with me. So I've learned to surround myself with others that are doing better than me, more than me, and that way I can continue learning from them and then be able to pass that down to somebody else who's coming, like the mentorship that you said. So I think it is a real thing, but I think we should try not to allow ourselves to continue to be scared about it, but we need to make the change.
So just to close, because I know we can't go on and on because it's just getting really good. One of the things that you guys talked about is the imposter syndrome. And I've heard you guys say, because in some places when you step into those places, being the only black person there, I understand how you can feel that way. Or even when you look at your own personal life and your own life experiences, knowing exactly where you come from and you being able to be at that table, it's a crazy realization sometimes. But one of the things I experienced when I was going through my process, I remember I was done with school and I needed to do my own externship. And pretty much the people that I would be trying to talk to, they'll tell me good luck and be on your way, right? So again, I pulled up a list of all the places that I could actually did my externship on, and I started calling each one of them, right? And then I had to go all the way to Douglasville. Babe, what was it? Close to Cartersville, but it's real far. It's like hour plus away drive, right? Plus I still had to work. But it was a white, Southern guy, and he was like, "Oh man, come on down." And I was able to learn from him, and of course I was able to move on and do my thing. But I remember one time I got a phone call from him, and he was like, "Man, I'm so proud of you." I was like, "Hey, what's going on?" We was doing something at one of my facilities, and he saw me on TV, and then he called me. He was like, "Man, I trained him. I trained this guy." But one verse that I wanted to go over, because we spoke about imposter syndrome so much, and it's very easy for us to feel like we don't belong. But remember in Psalm 118, verse 22, it says, "The stone which the builders refuse is become the headstone of the corner." So we've never are in a place where we don't belong. We belong. God placed us there. So the enemy may try to make us feel that we don't belong there, but in reality, we do belong, because, like you said, we should always walk as if we own the room, not in a sense of entitlement, but in the sense that we know that we belong to God, and God is our Father, and He never ceases to place us in places in which we belong.
Now, I know that you guys have other questions. Sorry about that, but si ça m'te besoin, nous faut nous finir. But remember, ça m'te plus vle information ça yo que n'a attendé là, nous te vle pour plus. Bon, c'est là t'es supposé gen plus jeune information ça yo, c'est pour eux même pour te bénéficier de l'information ça yo. But m'chita là m'a demandé côté jeune yo parce que tu es supposé là pour remplir un paquet de belle information que grand pile nan yo qui gagne what we call low self esteem. Grand pile nan yo parce que yo pas ouais black dans zone, yo pas fait tout effort pour yo capable arriver côté supposé arriver. Et puis garder information qu'a distribué là et puis c'est plus adulte que là pas même gen jeune alors que programme non c'est pour plus jeune que le. So in a sense m'pa vle dire que moi désappointé parce que I learn et moi te que en pile parents sometimes faut nous be strict avec ti moun yo le nous connait ba cap bon pour eux même ba oppression pour eux dans l'église là parce que panel ça c'était juste pour eux même parce que tant de fois les fin gradué yo pas connait côté pour aller y a pensé they don't know what to do. That was the main reason we have this for them, but unfortunately
Let's try to keep the question short and.
Je vais aller un petit peu short, mais je voulais faire un petit balance entre nous prenons exemple machine ou parler moins de transplantation qu'on fait, moi qu'à comprendre ça. Comme moi connais un peu de mécanique, je voulais faire un petit balance entre machine et corps humain. Une machine ou bien doit rouler près de 10 ans. Chaque jour à rouler, chaque jour. Gon moment arrivé, moteur et transmission, gen doit venir un petit peu fatigué. La bon la fumée, il pas veut marcher bien. Gon moment arrivé, machine ou pour lier ou décider pour pas changer moteur si moteur a pas une grosse fracture. Si vous pas veut changer moteur, gon ba qui est rebuild. Ou rebuild moteur ça, ou changer toute pièce en dedans, gon ba qui est les segments, ou changer toute bagage ça yo. Là mettez moteur ça sur machine nan ou start li, machine nan vini à zéro mileage, moteur vini à zéro mileage encore. Ce que veut dire machine ça, ou bien doit charger le jon, charger ou faire une route avec lui, n'importe route li voyager encore chaque jour pendant 10 ans. Alors moi mettez comme ça. Mais l'aime garder badia, les docteurs fait yon prenons par exemple yon opération cœur. Est-ce que nous pensons moi retourner 9 encore même gens avec
I guess that's for the doctors.
Moi mes questions ça en pile, OK? Malheureusement et peut-être heureusement avec encore une fois complexité qu'on nous, n'est pas aussi simple. Parce que on bagaille qui est la réjection. Premièrement, d'abord. L'on mette un moteur dans la machine, ou transmission, peu importe. Il y a plus de chance pour les continuer à marcher, Jean-Claude dit pour le marcher normalement, OK, sans problème. Mais corps pas même gens dans le sens ça avec une machine. Parce que vous doit remplacer cœur côté gain qui pas de bon, vous mettons l'autre pour corps propre corps pas capable ouais cœur ça que vous mettez là dedans là comme un intrus et puis il attaquer lui-même parce qu'il pas pour lui originalement. OK, so ça est le premier problème qui a passé. So ça fait comparaison parallèle ça ou pas qu'à faire exactement comme ça parce que son grand problème que les ont pas la réjection de organes. OK, so c'est ça que fait les transplant qui fait, ils mettent mon dans son série de médicaments pour aider corps pour pas combattre contre organes que vous mettez là-dedans là. Est-ce que vous comprenez ça m'zo? Donc et puis surtout si vous mettez l'autre organe là et puis vous même ou pas aucun changement qu'on fait dans le style de vie même problème n'a pas arrivé encore.
Non seulement ça, tout faut nous songer. Computer, machine, tout bagay ça, they are man-made. So we made it.
Thank
we
you.
can
That's
fix
a
it.
great point.
God made the body. We've been
Yes.
backward engineering this thing for the longest time. We're just trying to figure it out. So
Yeah. Et si songe ça comme des dit, sur chaque organe qui dans corps nous, un spécialiste spécifique pour lui. Parce que pas un seul spécialiste qui est capable de connaître tout ça qui dans toute partie corps complètement. Bouche, nez, yeux, oreilles. OK? So, quand nous trop compliqué, c'est ça que fait toujours dire, si vous essayez de comprendre ça, ou essayer de comprendre vraiment grandeur bon Dieu.
we got to get the book from God himself.
Yes.
So you were next and then you. Oh, you don't need the question anymore? All right, last one, I guess.
Hi. My question is to the pharmacist and the doctor. I know you might not have the answer, but I'm still gonna put it out there because it's a question from my patient. I'm an IMCU nurse and IMCU and ICU nurse. We've been giving some medication that we give a lot of those medications. And I'm just wondering, is the hospital or the doctors are getting some incentives for those medications? Because they give it, it's just like you popping up. Let me give you an example, like heparin. Whether the patient come with some problems, clotting factors or anything, they still getting it. If they're walking around, they still getting it. Every 8 hours, every 12 hours, and then you have patients telling you, I don't want this. And it's a shot. People are scared of shots, and it's just like, why am I getting this? Why? And it's like, and some other medication too. Medication that you should stop after a certain times, but doctors still prescribing them to patients. So as Christians or as you, if you're working for a company, how does that work for you? What do you know about that? What is it? Can I get an answer, please? I wish I could sit in the board of where I work, in the board of doctors, and ask them that question, but I can't.
So I think it's patient dependent. For example, if you have someone who, after having a clot in their lungs or in their legs or something like that, the usual 3 months or however time frame they're supposed to have some medication is extended for because they have another kind of disease that makes them even more at a higher risk. Then in that case, you have to kind of deviate from what the norm is. There are a lot of medications too where they function in different ways, which was, and you can probably allude more to this, but which was originally studied to be beneficial for one thing, but then was found to be beneficial for something else. So I think, so one is patient dependent, but also two, some of these medication works in different ways that it can, what you would usually use it for can also help with other issues, if that makes sense. Oh, and sorry, one more thing. So for, I mean, at least in the emergency department, we do something, it's RCU, or the billing is different. It's, for certain places, it's the number of patients that you see. And I did a presentation on this, I won't go too much into it, but the billing is separate from what the physician gets, because that's its own fee, different from the fee the hospital gets, different fee from what the pharmacy gets, different fee from like the lab gets. So at least for us, there's not an incentive to, you know, keep giving this medication or these medications. Perhaps like the complexity of the visit changes. For example, there's like a level 1 to 5 where if somebody comes in and you don't order any labs, you don't do any medications and what may have you, it's more of a level 1 to 2 or 3 versus if you were to give them, they come in, they're a lot of pain and you give them morphine or you give them some kind of other medication, then it becomes a 4 or 5. But just to say that I'm going to give you this medication just so my visit, or I get paid more because the complexity of the visit is more. I think that goes more into like an ethical issue. And at least I haven't seen too much of that in my practice. But I will say that doesn't mean there aren't people who say, I'm going to do a little bit more of this just to, you know, kind of be like kind of umph what I'm getting from this visit, if that makes sense.
And yes, and yeah, thank you for that. And to add to what she said, I completely agree with that. Doctors don't typically, I can say pretty much, doctors don't set those prices, right? Because, for example, a doctor gets paid what they get paid because that's their salary. But they're not counting, or if I give, you know, an extra dosing of this heparin, I'm going to get paid more. They could care less about that because they don't set those prices. The thing I would say is that does sometimes a patient get more than they need? Absolutely. That's why there's something called medication errors, right? I think more than anything, and there's a lot of work, as she said, she's done some studies herself to look at, there is something called waste in medicine. And I think in America, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we may have more waste in medicine than any other country because we have so much in abundance. So there's a lot of oversight, I think, that could be done to fix some of those issues, but it goes back to how this country is in itself in general. We waste so much because we have so much. So I don't think it's that different in the medical world, but there is constant work that is being done to find where those mistakes are being made so that they can rectify them, so they don't have to continue that way. And I agree with what she said. Some medications, the dosing may be different for one patient versus another. And there's guidelines that the doctors have to follow. And as an ICU nurse, I'm sure you know that there's guidelines that have to be followed based on how the algorithm is changing from the patient depending on what they're suffering from. Because if you have a patient with just blood clot alone, okay, it may be easier to manage that patient than that patient having the blood clot. Plus they develop pneumonia, and then they have another issue that happens, and this, and so everything changed. So now you gotta take so many more things into account. So at the surface level, it may look like, okay, you're giving this patient too much, but not necessarily, because you have now so many different specialists monitoring that patient because there's so much more going on with that patient. But again, I'm not denying that sometimes there is waste going on, but there's constantly studies, stewardship studies that are being done within the hospital system itself so that they can reduce some of these issues. I don't know if you wanted to add more to that.
Just on another side of the same thing you guys talk about, I seen, because although I'm in IT, but I actually do hospital software, laboratory software and stuff like that. So sometimes when I'm implementing those softwares and trying to figure out, like, you know, you have to talk to the physicians and the and exactly how certain things are done. I noticed sometimes hospital implement certain workflow and certain system as well because that's the path. Like, for example, even though she works at a hospital, when she comes in, the hospital also has protocols and workflow of how they do things. And sometimes that I see that on the a system implementation part, to where it's like, this path is the path that saved more lives, or is, you see what I'm saying? So yes, the doctor's gonna be like, okay, this patient, this, that, and the third, but by the time they come into the emergency room or this, that, and the third, there's a protocol to follow and a path to follow to reduce how much the amount of lives that is saved. So sometimes the patient, it could be the protocol that you are following before even the doctor comes in and say, okay, this, that, and the third. Because on the informatics side of things, I have to actually ask those questions and code the computer, whatever medication that's, however it's gonna dispense that medication to actually do the job. So sometimes that's what you might actually run into as well.
All right, all right, all right. We just want to thank God for our panelists. Let's give a round of applause, please, to our panelists. It is a blessing. It is a blessing to have those professionals, young professionals in our community. And I pray that we don't have to wait for an education day to have those kind of, presenters to come to the church, and also to encourage our young people, guide them, to help them. So we just want to say thank you to Dr. Sherry Style. Can you applause, please? Thank you to Brother Jeffrey. Thank you to Dr. Brendan. Thank you to Dr. Danger. Thank you to Brother Chadley. And a special thank you to my brother Leslie, who put this together. Come on, Brother Leslie. Yes, he has put this together. And also my brother Wilson for your participation and your great work. So as I mentioned, we don't have to wait for an education day to put this together. So we're going to try our best to gather all those professionals in our community so that they can continue to help and also service the community. So as we're about to put an end, we will ask you please to stand up as we're about to pray. And hopefully within the next 6 months, we may have something like that also for our young people, to continue to encourage them to go forward. We want them to be go-getters. No matter what, we want them to keep on going, because we know that they have lots of potentials. So as we're about to pray, let's have a word of prayer. Gracious God, we thank you so much for such a powerful and wonderful moment and blessed moment that you've sent to us. We thank you